Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. The scent of roasted turkey, the warmth of shared memories, the clink of wine glasses. It all meant something. But this past Thanksgiving, it changed everything. My name is Ella Calloway, and I work as an HVAC technician in Seattle. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. I own my own small business, built it from the ground up. Early mornings, late nights, frozen fingers, and back-breaking labor. It's all part of the job. But I never minded, because with every paycheck I knew I was doing something meaningful. Not just for myself, but for my family. See, I've been quietly paying for my younger sister Serafina's college tuition for years. Law school isn't cheap, but I made it work. I cut back, skipped vacations, worked overtime, because I believed in her, believed in us. Family, right? That belief shattered with a single phone call. It was just a few days before Thanksgiving. I had everything planned out. Closed the shop early, handed out holiday bonuses to my crew, even picked up a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon to bring to dinner. As I climbed into my truck, my phone rang. It was my mom. I smiled, expecting her usual, "Are you bringing pecan or pumpkin pie this year?" kind of call. But her voice was different. Hesitant, calculated. "Ella, sweetheart, about Thanksgiving. This year, I didn't like where it was heading. We think it might be best if you sat this one out." I froze, my hand tightening on the steering wheel. "What? Why?" She paused, just long enough for my stomach to drop. "Well, Serafina's boyfriend Dorian is bringing his parents. It's going to be a bit more formal. We just want to make a good impression," and I cut her off. "And I don't fit the image?" Silence. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. I was the one footing the bill for Serafina's education, and yet I wasn't presentable enough to sit at the Y. Same dinner table as her boyfriend's family? The words stung more than I expected. Not because I wanted attention, not because I cared what Dorian's parents thought, but because I realized, in that moment, that I wasn't being excluded by accident. I was being erased by my own family. She tried to sugarcoat it. Said we could have brunch next week. Said it was just one dinner. But it wasn't just one dinner. It was the culmination of years of unspoken disrespect. Finally said out loud. I hung up the call in disbelief, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. All those years, all those sacrifices. And now I was too much of an embarrassment to be seated at the table I helped keep together. I sat there in the quiet of my truck, the chill of the Seattle air fogging the windshield. And I made a decision. Quiet one, but resolute. If I wasn't good enough for the family table, maybe my money wasn't good enough for their future either. And just like that, everything began to change. The night after that phone call, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept spiraling like frost forming on the edge of a window, quiet, creeping, and cold. I kept replaying the conversation with my mother in my head, dissecting every pause, every fake laugh, every subtle attempt to make exclusion sound like kindness. It wasn't kindness. It was shame. And that shame didn't come from me. It came from them. I stood in the doorway of my HVAC shop, locking up for the evening. The neon sign buzzed overhead, flickering slightly in the twilight. The cold Seattle air bit at my skin, but inside, a fire was burning, slow, steady, and growing. I had given so much of myself to a family that had decided without hesitation that my worth was conditional. Conditional on appearances, conditional on convenience, conditional on whether or not I embarrassed them in front of people who wore suits and used phrases like legacy admissions. As I walked to my truck, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my mom, asking me to understand the situation. That it wasn't personal. That Serafina was just trying to make a good impression. That I could join for Christmas instead. I didn't reply. I got in the truck and drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. The city lights blurred in the Somme windshield, and I found myself pulling into an old diner on the edge of town. I sat in a booth with a cup of coffee and tried to untangle the years of quiet betrayal I had never fully acknowledged. Serafina, my brilliant, polished, carefully manicured little sister, had always been a bit selective. She never introduced me to her college friends. She always dodged questions about what I did for work, and when her boyfriend Dorian entered the picture, she never even mentioned me. Not once. I had chalked it up to distance, to the difference in our lives. She was in law school. I was in utility vans and crawl spaces. We weren't in the same world, but I thought we were still in the same family. Apparently not. I was still sitting in that booth when my phone lit up again. A message from my cousin Genevieve. "Hey, I overheard Mom and Serafina talking. She said she didn't want you there because she's worried what Dorian's parents will think if they know you're an AC tech. Her exact words were, I don't want them thinking we come from a working class background. I thought you should know." I stared at the screen, letting those words soak in. Working class background. Like it was some kind of disease. I'd paid for that girl's rent. Her textbooks, her tuition, every semester, every emergency, every little thing. And now she was. Afraid I'd remind someone that she didn't come from country clubs and generational wealth? I couldn't even feel hurt in that moment. Only clarity. I had been feeding a dream that erased me the second it got strong enough to walk on its own. That was the night I made my second decision. If they wanted a world without me in it, then they could have it. Every piece of it. But they wouldn't have my silence anymore, and they damn sure wouldn't have my money. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and for the first time in my life, I had nowhere to go. No table to sit at, no pie to bring, no obligatory small talk about football or politics or who got promoted this year. Just silence. I tried to distract myself. I took a long drive down the coast, windows cracked open, letting the cold bite into me like a reminder that I was still here, still breathing. I stopped at a small roadside diner and ordered a cup of coffee I barely touched. I texted a couple of friends, tried to act like I was fine, like I had simply made other plans. But the ache in my chest didn't care about the lies I told myself. It throbbed anyway. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram. There they were. My entire family, gathered around a perfect dinner table, lit with golden light and filtered smiles. My mom holding a wine glass mid-toast. My dad carving the turkey. Serafina in a sleek navy blue dress, beaming next to Dorian and his polished country club parents. Everyone looked so proud, so comfortable, like I had never even existed. And in many ways I hadn't. No one had asked about me in the comments. No one noticed my absence. Not even a passing mention of "we miss you, Ella." Nothing. That moment didn't just sting. It split something inside me. I sat there in the dark, phone screen glowing against the emptiness, and realized I had spent years sacrificing for people who would never do the same for me. And now, even my presence was a liability in their curated version of success. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and opened my laptop. The screen lit up with the university's payment portal. I knew it by heart, had logged into it so many times it felt like muscle memory. Serafina's account, upcoming semester. Payment due in 2 weeks. $21,500. I stared at the number. That wasn't just money. That was my time. My sweat. My early mornings in frozen garages. My skipped vacations. My sleepless nights managing emergency jobs. That was the version of love I had been giving. Quiet, steady, unquestioned. I moved the cursor to the Settings tab. Remove payment method. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this account as a payer? This action cannot be undone. I clicked, yes. No hesitation. The second I shut the laptop, my phone started ringing. Mom. I didn't answer. Then, it rang again, and again, and again. By the fourth call, I picked up, knowing exactly what was coming. Ella, she snapped, skipping the pleasantries. Serafina just called me crying. She says you cut off her tuition payments. Tell me that's not true. Oh, it's true, I said flatly, sipping my now cold coffee. Silence. Then a gasp. How could you be so cruel? I laughed, short, bitter, hollow. Cruel. That's rich coming from the people who erased me from their family photo over mashed potatoes and pumpkin pie. She was just trying to make a good impression. She's 24, Mom. I cut her off. She knows exactly what she's doing. And so do you. Mom's tone shifted, syrupy with guilt. You promised you'd help her through school. No, I said sharply. I promised to help my sister. Not someone who treats me like I'm disposable. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. The silence was all the confirmation I needed. I hung up. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was abandoning someone. I felt like I was finally choosing myself. The morning after the call with my mother, I woke up to a phone buzzing like a wasp trapped in a jar. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, all from her, from Serafina, from numbers I hadn't saved but recognized, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in months, suddenly acting like we were thick as thieves. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I brewed a strong cup of coffee and watched the steam rise in the quiet stillness of my kitchen. It was strange, that silence. Strange and unfamiliar and peaceful. No noise, no obligations, no guilt chipping away at me like a leak I kept ignoring. Just me, and the aftermath of a decision I no longer regretted. But my silence seemed to only stoke the fire. By midday, I gave in and answered one of the calls. My mother again. Ella, she snapped the second I picked up. What are you trying to prove? I leaned back in my chair. Good morning to you too. Don't play games, she hissed. Serafina's in tears. She got a notice from the university. They're saying she'll be unenrolled if the payment isn't made. You need to fix this. I'm not fixing anything, I replied calmly. You can't do this to her. She did it to herself. There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. She's your sister, my mom pressed, slipping back into that soft, performative concern. She's scared. She's young. She's 24, I said flatly. She's not a kid. She's a grown woman who made a choice, just like I did. You're overreacting. She tried again. Family makes sacrifices for each other. I laughed, low and humorless. Funny. That only seems to apply when I'm the one sacrificing. Ella, no, Mom, I cut her off. You want to talk about sacrifices? Where was Serafina when I was working weekends and pulling double shifts to keep her in school? Where was she when she uninvited me from Thanksgiving because she was embarrassed of me? Where was she when she let you lie to my face and say it was just more formal this year? She's not scared. She's selfish. Another pause. I could feel her scrambling for a new angle. And then it came, soft, pleading. Okay, but what do you expect her to do now? Just drop out? Her whole future is on the line. That's not my problem anymore. She needs help, Ella. She needed help when she treated me like a stain on her image. She needed help when she acted like I was beneath her. She needed help when she looked at my love and labor and saw something to be ashamed of. I could hear my dad's voice, now in the background, chiming in, deep, stern, disappointed. You're punishing your own blood. And there it was. Punishment. As if choosing to stop funding someone who actively disrespected me was an act of revenge rather than self-preservation. I stood from my chair, walking toward the window, letting the morning light fall across my face. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said softly. "I'm just done being used." And I meant it, because for the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting. I was setting a boundary, a line in the sand, one I wouldn't let them cross again. The silence didn't last long. Within 24 hours, the fallout began to ripple like cracks in ice. And right at the center of it was Serafina, spiraling as her carefully curated world began to fracture. She had called me multiple times that morning, voicemails filled with panic, indignation, desperation. I ignored them all. But what I didn't expect was for her to drag someone else into the mess, her boyfriend, Dorian. It started when she showed up at his apartment, hair disheveled, eyes red, phone clutched in one hand as if she had just run. Straight through a storm, Dorian answered the door mid-coffee, still in a sweatshirt and joggers. "You won't believe what Ella did," she blurted out, before he could even say hello, charging past him into the living room like a hurricane. He closed the door and followed her, concerned. "What are you talking about?" She cut me off. Completely. My tuition payment didn't go through, and now the university says I have 48 hours before I'm unenrolled. Dorian blinked. "Wait. Ella? Your sister?" "Yes," she snapped, pacing like a caged animal. "She's acting completely irrational. She just abandoned me." Dorian furrowed his brows. "I thought your parents were covering your tuition." Serafina froze. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have a prepared answer. No smooth deflection, no half-truth lined with sugar. "Well, they help. But Ella's been taking care of most of it," she muttered, her gaze suddenly very interested in the floor. "How much is most?" Dorian asked, voice tightening. She gave a weak shrug. "All of it." His jaw clenched. "So, the entire time I've known you, the law school, the apartment, the expenses, that's all been funded by Ella?" "It's not a big deal," she said quickly. "I just didn't want you to think I was some kind of charity case." "But you are one," Dorian snapped. "You let me believe a lie, Serafina, and you erased your sister from your life in the process," she scoffed. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I have to maintain a certain image. It's not like I don't appreciate what she's done, You just what?" he asked, his tone dangerously calm now. "Didn't want anyone to know where you really came from? Didn't want your friends or my parents to meet the woman who literally built your future from scratch?" Her silence was answer enough. He stood, grabbing his keys. "I need some space." "Are you serious?" she cried, her voice cracking. "You're mad at me over this?" "I'm not just mad," he said as he walked past her. "I'm disappointed. And I'm starting to realize I don't know who you are." She didn't follow him. Couldn't. And later that night, when she reached out to me one final time, all she sent was a single message. "I hope you're happy. You just ruined my life." Stared at the screen, then locked my phone and took a sip of wine. No guilt. No second guessing. Because if she thought I had ruined her life, then she hadn't learned the most important truth yet. She had done that all by herself. I should have known Serafina wouldn't stop there. A few days passed, and just when I thought the storm was finally dying down, it hit again. Only this time, it came in the form of whispers, stares, and sideways comments from people I once called clients, and some I used to call family. It started with Mrs. Carter, a longtime customer who had been using my HVAC services for years. I had just finished a routine inspection at her house, wiped my hands on a rag, and handed her the clipboard for signature. That's when she gave me a look I hadn't seen before, half pity, half judgment. "I never thought you'd abandon your own sister like that, Ella," she said, her voice edged with quiet disapproval. I blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" She shook her head slowly. Family is supposed to take care of each other. I just didn't think you were the kind of person to turn your back on your own blood." I forced a smile. Tight, sharp. "Well, Mrs. Carter, I suppose that depends on which version of the story you've heard." She didn't reply, and I didn't give her the satisfaction of explaining myself. Instead, I climbed into my truck, pulled out my phone, and opened Instagram. Serafina had been busy. Her posts were masterfully vague but unmistakably targeted. Carefully crafted captions like, "Some people love money more than family. Sad, but true. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you used to trust." The comments were even worse. Distant relatives, old friends, even people I hadn't spoken to since high school chiming in. "You deserve better, babe. Some people don't know what loyalty means. Stay strong, beautiful. You're not alone." And just like that, she was the victim, and I was the villain. My phone started ringing again. My aunt, then my uncle, then my mother. All of them suddenly concerned. All of them now experts in moral superiority. Where were these people when I was being excluded from Thanksgiving? When Serafina was pretending I didn't exist? When she was lying to her boyfriend about where her entire education was coming from? Nowhere. But the second the money stopped, suddenly everyone had something to say. Enough. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and started the engine. I had let her control the narrative for too long. Let her twist the truth into something ugly. Something that painted her as innocent and me as cruel. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I drove straight to her apartment, marched up to her door, and knocked. Hard. It took a moment, but then it opened. Serafina stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing the second she saw me. Her phone was still in her hand, probably mid-scroll, through her latest pity parade. "Ella," she said coolly, like I was a salesperson interrupting her evening. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I pushed past her without waiting for an invitation. She scoffed. "Oh, come in. Why don't you?" I turned to face her, my jaw tight, my voice low. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Her expression flickered, guilt, defensiveness, then the polished smirk she always wore when she wanted to look unbothered. "I'm just telling the truth," she said, folding her arms. I pulled out my phone and held up her latest post. "No, you're spinning. A story. You're making me the villain because I finally stopped playing the silent ATM." She shrugged. "Maybe people are just seeing who you really are." I stepped closer. "No, Serafina. They're about to see who you really are." And this little game she was playing, it wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. Serafina's smirk wavered just slightly, but she didn't back down. "Oh, please," she scoffed, trying to sound dismissive. "You think people are going to turn on me? I've built connections, real ones. No one cares what you say. You fix air conditioners, Ella. You really think that makes you someone?" The words didn't hit the way she hoped. Not anymore. Maybe once they would have cut deep. Back when I still believed that love from family meant tolerating being minimized. But now? Now they just revealed how hollow her view of people really was. I looked her square in the eye and smiled. Not a sarcastic smile. Not an angry one. A calm, measured one. "Go ahead, Serafina. Keep lying. Keep manipulating. Keep pretending you're the victim. But just know, when it all comes crashing down, I won't be there to catch you." I turned and walked to the door, hand on the handle, then paused, just for a second. "You had everything, Serafina. And all it cost you was the ability to be decent." Then I walked out. And just like that, she was alone. But not just physically. Because whether she wanted to admit it or not, the foundation of her life, the one she'd carefully constructed from curated photos, polished appearances, and other people's sacrifices, was already crumbling. And she knew it. Dorian was the first to sense something was off. A few nights later, Long after midnight, he received an anonymous message in his inbox. No name, no subject, just a question and a screenshot. Did you know your girlfriend's been lying about who's paying her tuition? At first, he dismissed it. Some troll, he figured. Bitter, attention-seeking. But the seed had been planted, and once that seed started growing, it became impossible to ignore. He started digging. He contacted the university, claiming to be Serafina. It took him 3 attempts, some clever maneuvering, and a lot of patience. But eventually he got through to someone in billing, and the truth came out. Simple, undeniable. There were no scheduled payments, no parent-sponsored plan, just a long payment history from a now-removed third-party payer, E. Calloway. When Serafina showed up at his apartment the next night, expecting warmth and reassurance, she was met with cold eyes and a wall she couldn't talk her way through. Dorian was sitting on the couch, his phone in hand, arms crossed. I called the university, he said, his voice emotionless. They told me everything. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I wanted to help with your tuition. Thought maybe I could ease your stress a little, he continued. But imagine my surprise when I found out the only reason you haven't been drowning in student debt is because your sister, who you didn't even invite to Thanksgiving, has been paying for everything. It's not, Dorian, I just didn't want you to think, that what? He cut in. That you come from a working-class family? That you had to rely on someone else to get where you are? I was protecting our image, she said weakly. It's not like I don't appreciate what Ella's done. But you erased her, he snapped. You treated her like trash, while using her like a credit card. You don't get to say you appreciate someone while pretending they don't exist. She reached out for his hand, tears forming. He didn't take it. I don't know who you are anymore, Dorian said, but I know I don't want to be part of this version of your life. And then he walked out. Serafina didn't move. Couldn't. Because for the first time, it wasn't just her tuition slipping through her fingers. It was everything. The next morning, Serafina woke to a cold apartment and an even colder truth. She had lost control. Her phone was still clutched in her hand from the night before, its screen dark, waiting for a message from Dorian that would never come. But instead, there was something else, an email notification from the university. Subject: Final warning. Tuition payment. Past due. Her stomach flipped. She sat upright, hands trembling as she tapped open the message. Dear Miss Calloway, this is your final notice regarding your outstanding tuition balance. If payment is not received within 48 hours, your enrollment for the upcoming semester will be canceled. Sincerely, Office of Student Finance. Serafina bolted, out of bed, and stumbled to her laptop. She logged into the student portal with shaking fingers, praying there had been some mistake. But the number was still there. $21,500. Due immediately. No pending transactions, no scheduled payment, no savior on the other side of the screen. She jumped to the loan application page. If Ella wasn't going to pay, fine. She'd figure something out. She filled out the forms, typed in her parents' financial information, and hit submit. Denied. Bad credit. Outstanding debt. She cursed under her breath and tried another lender. This time, she used her own name and a different cosigner. Denied again. The walls were closing in. Her eyes welled with tears as she reached for her phone again and scrolled through her contacts. Dorian. She paused. Called. Voicemail. Called again. Still voicemail. Her throat tightened. She scrolled further, until she stopped at my name. Her thumb hovered over the call button, and then, as if the universe itself had made the decision for her, the screen lit up. User has blocked you. She froze. It was final, permanent, and that's when it hit her. Really hit her. There were no more safety nets, no more soft landings. For the first time in her life, she was truly, undeniably alone. But Serafina didn't break down. Not at first. She lashed out. Later that day, I was in the middle of a staff meeting at my HVAC shop. The conference room was full, projector on, laptops open, coffee half drunk. I had just finished discussing new service contracts when the front door slammed open so hard it rattled the glass. Every head turned, and there she was. Serafina stood in the doorway, hair tangled, eyes bloodshot, hands clenched into fists at her sides. Her entire body radiated rage and desperation. "You ruined my life," she screamed across the room. I slowly set down my clipboard and exhaled. "Here we go." "No," I said evenly, my voice calm but firm. "I stopped paying for it. You ruined it yourself." Gasps echoed around the room. Clients in the waiting area turned in their seats. Employees froze, unsure of what to do. But Serafina didn't care. She stepped further into the room, voice trembling with fury. "You abandoned me! You left me with nothing! How could you do this to your own sister?" I crossed my arms and leaned casually against the table. "That's funny. I don't remember you calling me your sister when you were lying to Dorian about where your tuition money came from." Her jaw clenched. "That's different. Is it?" I tilted my head, because from where I'm standing, you only acknowledge me when you need something. She glanced around, hoping for backup, for sympathy, for someone, anyone, to take her side. But no one moved. Instead, from the back of the room, my senior, tech, Harry stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "you need to leave." Serafina whirled toward him. "Excuse me?" "This is a place of business," Harry replied without flinching, "and you're disrupting it." "I'm her." "Sister!" she snapped. Harry didn't blink. "And this is her business! You're trespassing!" Her breath hitched. "You don't understand. She's leaving me with nothing. She's ruining my future." Harry's voice remained steady. "No, ma'am. She just stopped letting you take advantage of her." And that was it. That was the moment. She realized the tide had turned, and no one in the room was standing with her anymore. They escorted her out within minutes. Security had already been called by one of my employees. Quietly, efficiently, no drama, no fuss. Serafina didn't go quietly, of course. She screamed. She cursed. She threw accusations like daggers aimed at a target that no longer flinched. Her voice echoed down the hallway and into the street like some tragic performance, except no one was applauding. And just like that, she was gone. The office slowly returned to normal. Someone made an awkward joke to cut the tension, and a few quiet laughs followed. But I knew something had shifted, not just in the room, but in me. The woman who used to make herself small, for the sake of keeping the peace, was no longer in charge. That evening, as I locked up and stepped into the winter air, my phone rang again. My mother. I stared at her name glowing on the screen, her voice already playing in my head. That tired, tone laced with false concern, the weary sighs, the guilt dipped in honey. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Elle, we need to talk," she said, cutting straight to the point. "Of course we do," I said flatly, leaning against the railing outside the shop. "I just spoke to Serafina," she continued, voice tight. "She's a mess." "I'm sure she is. She's hurting, Elle." "Don't you care at all?" I paused, letting the silence stretch. "Did you care when I was left out of Thanksgiving? When I was erased from your photos and your table like I didn't exist?" There was a beat of silence. Dad's voice joined in now, gravelly and stiff. "Maybe things got a little out of hand, but Serafina's still your sister. She needs help." "No," I said, shaking my head even though they couldn't see it. "She needs to learn." Mom jumped in, her voice brittle. "You're doing well now, aren't you? You have a business, a stable income. Maybe there's a way to work something out. Just until she's back on her feet." I let out a low laugh. Bitter, hollow. "So now I'm family again. Now that you need something. Elle." "Don't be like this," Dad said sharply. "No," I snapped. "You don't get to tell me who to be anymore. You think I'll cave, because I always have. You think I'll sacrifice my peace for her comfort. Again. But not this time. Please." Mom tried one more time. "Just consider it." "Have considered it," I said, "for years. And the answer is still no. If she wants to finish school, let her figure it out. Let her take out a loan, get a job, learn what it's like to stand on her own 2 feet. "You're punishing her," Dad growled. "I'm setting a boundary," I corrected. And if that feels like punishment, maybe that says more about what she expected from me than what I ever owed. And with that, I hung up. No second thoughts. No guilt curling in my stomach like it used to. Just quiet. That eerie, unfamiliar quiet that comes when the noise of manipulation finally stops. It wasn't the kind of peace that came with soft music and warm lights. No. This was the kind that came from the aftermath of a storm. When the damage is done, the truth has landed, and the only thing left to do is rebuild on your own terms. The days that followed were quiet, eerily so. No calls, no texts, no messages dripping with guilt or veiled manipulation. Just silence, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. I didn't realize how heavy it all had been until the weight was gone, the constant obligation, the pressure to show up, pay up, shut up. It was like I had been holding my breath for a decade, and finally, I exhaled. But part of me still waited, still expected the phone to ring, for someone to show up at my door with another desperate plea for just a little help. But no one came. No one called, until Genevieve did. I was on my lunch break, sitting outside my shop with a cup of coffee, sun warming my face through the Seattle chill, when her name popped up on my phone. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, she replied softly. "I just wanted to check in, see how you're holding up." I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting to the pale blue sky. Honestly, better than I thought. There was a pause. Then, as I expected, she continued. "I figured. But I also thought you might want to know what's going on with them." I didn't ask who them meant. I already knew. Still, I didn't respond. Did I want to know? Did it even matter? "She moved back home," Genevieve said quietly. "Dropped out, for now. Says she's figuring things out, but..." She trailed off, then added, "Well, you know how she is." I closed my eyes, not surprised, just tired. "And your parents?" I asked. "They're struggling, financially, but they'd never admit it. They're still blaming you, of course, still pretending it's all your fault she lost everything." "Of course they are," I murmured. Genevieve sighed. "They'll never change. You know that, right?" "I do," I said. "I think I always did. I just wasn't ready to accept it. For what it's worth," she added gently, "I think you did the right thing." A small, tired smile touched my lips. "Thanks, Jen." "Anytime. And Merry Christmas. You deserve a good one this year." Later that evening, I sat at my desk reviewing expansion plans. My HVAC business was growing faster than I ever imagined. More clients, more staff, bigger contracts. I used to downplay it, shrink my success to make others comfortable, to not outshine the family who refused to acknowledge my worth. But not anymore. This time, I wasn't investing in people who only saw me as a wallet with legs. I was investing in myself. And that night, just before bed, My phone buzzed one last time. Mom. Text message. Merry Christmas. We miss you. Let's talk. I stared at the screen. A year ago, I would have replied. Would have let guilt guide me. Would have second-guessed everything. But not this time. This time, I simply deleted the message because I had nothing left to say. For the first time in my life, I had chosen me, and it felt damn good.